Oh, well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn, and I'm delighted to have a very special guest, the wonderful Donna Presley. How are you, Donna?
I'm wonderful, Andrew. How are you?
Hey, not too bad. And tell me where you are at the moment, because you've got glorious instruments behind you.
I'm in my home
And where's your home?
in Arkansas.
Ah, I love Arkansas. Beautiful place. So tell me, just for the benefit of those who don't know, you're Elvis's first cousin. Explain that relationship.
Okay, my mom, Nash, and Elvis's father, Vernon, were brother and sister.
Well, there we go. That's easy, isn't it? It
Yes,
was.
very easy.
And what we always hear a lot about families. Was it a close family?
Yes, it was very much so. Very loving, warm, close knit family.
Fantastic. And you grew up, you spent time at Gracelands with Elvis and the rest of the family. What's your earliest childhood memory?
Oh my goodness. I guess probably I know we went there right after he bought Graceland to visit them before they left to go to Germany. And then after, when they came back, my mom and my sister and I went to Memphis, and we pulled up in a cab, and we went to the front door, and Elvis opened the front door, and he was standing there in black pants and a white shirt, and he looked like a Greek god as always.
It is wonderful. And when, I mean, what was your, how old were you at that sort of age then? Because when you're growing up, you're never quite sure who's the superstar and everything else. They're
But
just family members, aren't they?
exactly. But when he came back from Germany, I would have been 10 years old. And then at that time, in the summertime, as soon as school was out, I would go and spend the whole summer there at Graceland. And then my parents would come pick me up before school time because I was born in Missouri and lived there until he bought the Circle G. At which time my family and I moved on to the Circle G, and I was 17 at that time. And but I spent all my summers before that there at Graceland.
I know, fantastic stuff. And it's always interesting, isn't it? Because your school days, they always say, show me a child till the age of 7 and I'll show you the adult, I'll show you the man and woman on that sort of basis. What were you like in those early days yourself?
Well, at that time, Andrew, I was extremely shy. And most people don't believe that when they see me now, but at that time I was extremely shy. But just growing up in Missouri, and people found out that I was related to Elvis. It wasn't something that I went around telling people at the time, but they would find out about it. And I remember, when I was in the fifth grade, a girl came over to me and she said, "Donna," and I said, "Yes," and she said, "Are you really related to Elvis Presley?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Would you touch my milk carton?" And I said, "Why?" She said, "Because you have the same bloodline and the same bloodline and same DNA as Elvis, and you're as close as I'll ever get." So I did. I knew then he was a superstar.
And it is interesting, isn't it, when you have sort of famous people in the family, how people's attitude to you changes. Did you find that you suddenly got a whole new group of friends, and did that make you a bit wary?
Well, and that's true. And Uncle Vernon said something that I thought was very profound. He said, "It's not us that have changed. It's people's perception of us that has changed." And so that's very true, But yeah, once they find out you're related to someone that's, except especially an icon superstar like Elvis, then everybody has a different idea about things. So you
Yeah.
just have to kind of really let them know who you are, let them know who you are as a family. And, and Elvis, had to deal with that. That was one reason he wanted all of us so close. They kept us there, because after I left the Circle G, then my family and I moved on to the grounds at Graceland there right behind the house.
Right.
And he had, family there all around and close friends that he had grown up with and so forth, because he knew that we loved him because he was Elvis and not because he was Elvis Presley.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, isn't there? Because there's the public persona, which everybody does, and they've all got their own stories and so on and so forth. I mean,
Yeah.
in your book, Elvis: Precious Memories, you mentioned Elvis's deep family values. Can you share a story then that best illustrates his generosity towards relatives?
Oh my goodness. Well, Elvis was known for buying houses and for buying cars and jewelry and different things like that, paying bills, hospital bills and so forth. But, one thing that I would like to tell you about, because it shows his generosity, it shows his deep faith and his love of family. My mother was an Assembly of God minister. And we all grew up in the Assembly of God church. And when Elvis found out that she was going to, be preaching in her own church and so forth, he said, Aunt Nash, I really want to help you. And he said, I want to help you spread the word. So she said, okay. And so he bought 4 acres of ground in Walls, Mississippi. And then he helped her obtain a metal building to put on the ground. And so then after that, he called her over and he said, Aunt Nash, do you have a car? And she said, honey, you gave me a car last night. Which was a Mark IV Lincoln. He said, no. That was a family car. This is just for you to go around and do your ministry and speak to people, because he knew she visited nursing, facilities and things like that. And so she said, okay, so he took her and he put, they walked around the car a lot there. And he said, I want you to pick one out. And she said, no, honey, if you want me to have it, you're going to have to pick it out. So as they walked around the car lot, he saw this baby blue Grand Prix Pontiac, and it had white Landau top and white interior. So he opened the door and he set her inside, and he knelt down on the ground there, and he said a prayer, and he said, this is the one. And so then, they took it home. So she was driving around in that. Well, then a couple of nights later, he takes her. She's over at Graceland, and he says, Aunt Nash, do you have a piano for your church? And she said, well, no, honey, not yet. So he said, well, come go with me. So he takes her into the music room at that time. And you remember the gold leaf piano?
Of course.
Okay. He said, now you have a piano for your church, which this is a huge grand piano, and it's gold leaf and it belonged to Elvis. But my dad worked for Elvis, and he oversaw the property, anything that needed to be done. So he was always trying to, save Elvis money, things like that, because that was the era my dad came from. Definitely save a penny when you can. And he said, well, I can move this. So he wraps it in moving blankets, puts it on the bucket of a tractor, and takes it down Graceland Drive out onto Elvis Presley Boulevard and down to Mississippi, where my mom's church was. Well, he takes it up on the hill where the church sat. And he's sitting there looking at the church and the piano. And my mom says, well, Earl, can't you just take down a wall and put it in? He said, yes, I could do that. But then you wouldn't have any place to sit. This piano is massive. So he goes back up to Graceland with it. And that night she goes over and Elvis is there. And she said, well, honey, that piano you gave me? He said, yes, Aunt Nash. And she said, well, it's too big to fit in the church. Do you mind if I take it somewhere and exchange it for something smaller? He said, Aunt Nash, it's yours. I gave it to you. You can burn it if you want to. It's yours. So my mom takes it to a music store in Memphis, and she trades it straight across the board for a spinet piano. So then later, it sat in the Country Music Hall of Fame for many years with this story. I heard that it sold for $2 million. But then, now it's somewhere else. So it's just, it was an amazing story. And that can tell you exactly what he felt and how he wanted to be close to family, how he wanted to help family, and also help others in spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ, which he was always about. He loved doing.
And it is those sort of glorious moments, isn't it? Because it's basically when you can rely on family members. There's always, however, some sort of disagreements and things like that. Do you remember any particular disagreements, and what was the cause of those?
Well, there were no disagreements inside the family, but there were times that he might disagree with something. Like I'll tell you and give you another example. When I was 19, I was engaged, and I know that's very young. I was stupid, but anyway, that's beside the point. So I was at Graceland, and I brought him over to meet our grandmother, and Elvis was there, and we were sitting out in the jungle room, and he walks over to me, and he either would pat me on the head or kiss me on top of the head, because I was 15 years younger, so
right.
But child, according to him. And he said, well, hey, Donnie, how are you? And I said, I'm good, Elvis. And he said, well, who's this? And I said, this is my fiance. And he said, fiance? And I said, yes. Okay. So he sticks his hand out. I said, hi, I'm Elvis Presley. And the guy shook his hand, and he says, well, tell me, when are you and Donnie getting married? And he said, and I know he meant this as a joke, but it just didn't work out that way. He said, well, when she can support me unto the style which I've grown accustomed. And Elvis went, I saw this muscle twitch right here, and I thought, oh, this is not going to end well, you know. So he shook his hand. He said, nice to meet you. And he goes straight to my grandmother's room. So the next morning, I get a phone call, come to Graceland. So I knew what it was about. So I walked as slowly as I could from the back of the house where we lived. And I walked over there, and I went in Grandma's room, and she said, Elvis wants me to give you a message. And I said, okay. She said, he would have given it to you himself, but he didn't want to make you cry. I said, okay. He said he's not going to let you marry that guy no matter what he has to do. He's not good enough for you. No way am I going to let that happen. So she said he was very upset about that. But I figured Elvis was smarter than I was, so I broke up with him.
A wise, and as you say, there was this 15-year age
Yeah.
gap.
Yeah.
So obviously this was knowing with families and so on and so forth. This was before even Elvis was famous. How did you see that sort of progression from being a struggling artist, if you want, to the superstar? What were the biggest changes that you noticed, and when did you notice them?
Well, I was 4 years old when Elvis hit the scene, and I mean, it kind of just grew, you know. So by the time that I was old enough to really understand anything about that, he'd been famous for quite a while. Right. So he'd been famous my whole life, basically, most of it anyway. Yeah. So it was just something that we just knew, you know. But, you know, the thing about Elvis is he loved family. He loved, you know, have us around. He told me himself one time, he said, you know, Donnie, I envy you. And I said, why is that, Elvis? Why would you envy me? He said, because when somebody wants to be your friend, they really want to be your friend. Yeah. And when some guy asks you out on a date, it's because he likes you. He said, I don't have that luxury. I never know if someone's with me because I'm Elvis or because I'm Elvis Presley. So, and my mom said he was always a bird in a gilded cage. So, you know, that limits you. Because you never know exactly what somebody else's agenda or their thoughts are. That's why he kept all of us close, because he knew we loved him no matter what, whether he was Elvis or Elvis Presley.
And I think that's so true. I have a lot of very famous people on the show, and they always have that. There's that sort of paranoia, if you like, about why are these people wanting to get close to me? Are they genuine friends? Because so often they're attracted by the spotlight rather than the actual individual.
Yes, absolutely. That's very true. And, you know, and oftentimes if someone falls, you know, the friends are gone. So then you know who they are, you know who the real true friends are. So, and like I said, he always knew that we loved him for Elvis, and we would always be there no matter what.
Yeah. And in terms of music yourself, I mean, you were 4 years old when Elvis made it or started to make it in a major way. Did you like his music?
Oh, absolutely. I listen to it all the time, still do. I mean, his music is classic. It's timeless. So, you know, he's the best, and he's the greatest entertainer that ever walked on a stage, you know, in every way. He made it possible for so many others, you know. He didn't just break the doors down. He blew them off, you know, the hinges, and that's a precedent for everybody.
Yeah, no, fantastic stuff. And obviously you worked alongside your uncle Vernon in Graceland's office after Elvis passed. How did that influence your perspective on his preserving his legacy?
Well, you know, Uncle Vernon was all about protecting Elvis and taking care of Elvis. And then I started working for Uncle Vernon after Elvis passed away. But, you know, I knew that everything that was important to him was preserving Elvis's legacy and preserving everything for Lisa. That's his only grandchild. So his one thought in the world was protecting Lisa, taking care of her, and making sure that she had, you know, the legacy that Elvis left her.
Yeah, no, really, really important. And obviously the world was devastated at the passing of Elvis. Talk to me about that day when you found out the news yourself.
You know, it was an extremely horrible, awful day. I was at home. I had two sons. One was 3.5 and one was 11 months. So I was at home with my children, and my mother calls, and she's crying uncontrollably. And I could barely understand what she was saying. And she said, pray for Elvis, pray for Elvis. And I said, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she said, just pray for Elvis. And she hung up. So I gathered, being raised in a faith-based family and believing in prayer, I gathered my two sons into the living room, and I knelt down in the floor and I just started praying. I didn't know what I was praying for. I just knew Elvis needed prayers. So I started praying, and about 20 minutes later, my mom called and she said, it's too late. It's too late. Sorry. It's too late. He's gone. And I couldn't grasp what she was saying. I said, what are you talking about? What do you mean? She said, he's gone. Come to Graceland now. And so I procured a babysitter for my children, and I immediately went to Graceland. I went in the front gates, walked into the back door, which is where family always came in, and I walked to my grandmother's room. And Uncle Vernon was sitting in a chair just outside my grandmother's room on the phone. And I walked over and I knelt down on the floor and I just hugged him, and we just cried. And I said, Uncle Vernon, I'm so sorry. And he said, I don't know what we're going to do, babe. I just don't know what we're going to do. How can we live without him? He was the center, of everything. And then the phone rang again, and he started talking on the phone. So I just went into my grandmother's room, and it was chaos. It was confusion. It was like, this is unbelievable. How could this happen? Because you never think of something like that happening, especially someone who's such a presence. You could actually feel Elvis before he even walked into the room. His presence was it just filled everything. And so to know that he was no longer there, it was like just a black hole where our hearts were. So it was very difficult.
I can hear in your voice now. It's very difficult talking about it. It's everybody suffers grief. We go through those sort of experiences. It must be very difficult when the world is also trying to get to the story and things like that. How did you cope during those times with the media intrusiveness?
Well, it was part of it. We had known always that everything had media involved in it that involved Elvis. He was the most photographed and sought after person in the world when he walked out the doors. So it was, most people were very, very kind, but there were some that were not, which was very painful for the family because you couldn't walk into a grocery store or hear a news channel, if someone was being unkind, and then it made it very difficult. But, it's something we dealt with most of our lives. So you do press on and you do what you know to do, and you handle things the way you feel like that the Lord would have you to handle them, and take the high road and go from there.
Yeah. Now, you've recently spoken about misconceptions in Priscilla Presley's memoir.
Yes.
What specific stories do you feel have been misrepresented?
Well, I feel that, the family was misrepresented. I'm here to defend Elvis and my family. I'm not here to hurt anybody. I'm just here to defend them. And because they no longer are here to defend themselves. So those of us that are left here, there's been so much said about Elvis being an addict. And he was not an addict. He took prescription medication for the many, many ailments that he had. Sometimes he took too much. Sometimes he didn't take any. But, to label him as an addict and to blame him for other people, having a problem, I felt was something that I should defend him for.
And anything, obviously it's very important. I say that the only mistress we have here is the truth, and
Yes.
Elvis isn't here to defend himself. So it's good to have your side of it. Why do you think people would misrepresent that side?
Well, I think sensationalism. I think, not having proper knowledge of what an addict is. And to be quite honest, I was married to an addict, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. An addict it's all about their next fix. They don't care who they hurt, what they have to do to obtain that fix. That's all they care about. Elvis was not like that, and they can't perform their daily functions practically. Elvis wasn't like that. To be able to live the life that he lived and to be able to continue his work, especially at such a high bar that he always set for himself and for everyone else, that's just not possible for an addict.
Right.
So, want to
So
educate.
he wasn't an addict then.
No.
What caused his deterioration of his health in his later years?
Well, like I said, the fact that he had a lot of ailments. I mean, he had hypertension, he had glaucoma, he had twisted colon. All these things can become, poisonous in your body and can cause great harm to you.
Yeah, and I think it's always important, as I say, that our mistress, the only mistress we have, is the truth, and trying to set the record straight. What
Yeah.
other aspects do you think have been misrepresentative about Elvis?
Well, I think that, the fact that, maybe he could be swayed by people at certain times about certain things. He and Uncle Vernon were both very strong willed men and very at themselves. They knew what they wanted and how they wanted it. So I think that, and the fact that Uncle Vernon especially has been very, it's a huge misconception about Uncle Vernon. He was a very strong-willed, very strong man, very intelligent man. Just and his only thought in the whole world was take care of Elvis and his one and only grandchild. That was all. That was his life.
Right. So again, saying that side's been misrepresented. What about the relationship with the Colonel?
Well, Elvis and the Colonel. Well, that I know that they had a, kind of a back and forth relationship. I mean, they worked together. They worked together for many, many years. However, I do know that Elvis had said he was going to change a lot of things in his life, and probably move on from some of the people that were in them. I don't know who those people were because he didn't make that evident before he passed away. But I knew there were going to be huge changes. I knew that he said he was planning on going to Europe. So that was going to be a definite thing because he always wanted to do that. And that's one reason I love working, all over the world and especially in Europe and so forth, because he always wanted to be there. And I feel like if I can stand in his stead and bring him with me, then I'm fulfilling the legacy and fulfilling what he would want me to do.
Yeah, and as you say, you mentioned that you obviously perform yourself and you tour with musicians who actually worked with
I do.
Elvis. What
Thank you.
wonderful stuff! I look forward to coming to the next time you're over here, or when I come and see
Yeah,
you.
amazing. Matter of
It'd be
fact,
really good. What aspects of Elvis's stage presence or musical style do you try to honor in your own shows?
oh wow. Just standing up there and doing the best that I can and giving the best, show that I possibly can, whether I'm singing, whether I'm speaking, whatever. I just want to always deliver the truth, always show people that Elvis was and the family what we were really like, what were as a family, what he was as just not just the superstar, the icon, but as just Elvis and just what he was like around family. He loved family. He was very, very close to our grandmother. Uh, whenever he came in, whenever he left, he never left the house or came into the house. He didn't go see her and say hello to her and love on her and let her know how much, that he loved her. And if she was ill, he would go and lay his hands on her and he'd say a prayer for her, that sort of thing. And my mom, he and my mom, she was 9 years old when Elvis was born, and they lived next door to each other. So they grew up together. They played together. She babysit with him, and so forth, and so they had a really close relationship. We all did. But he would call my mom over at nighttime, and he'd wrap her in a blanket, because he kept his room ice cold. So and they would discuss the Bible for hours on hours.
Yeah.
And he always wanted to make sure that we were around, that we were happy, that we were just enjoying life with him. And that's what Elvis wanted to do. His whole thing in life was to take care of the family that he loved and be there for others and to help others. And he's always done that.
Yeah. And very, very touching stories on that sort of basis. More and more come out. I mean, your
Yeah.
mother, you mentioned that Nash Presley, she co-authored Flower While I Live.
Yeah.
What new memories did you add to the recent reprint, and how does that reflect on Elvis's early family life?
Well, I added some stories about, the times that I spent with Elvis, our talks together, advice he gave me. And I'll tell you that I was sitting in grandmother's room one night and he walked in and my grandmother had gone to the kitchen to get something. So it was just Elvis and I. And he sat down in the floor in front of my chair. And he was saying, "Hey, Donnie, what you doing? You're fixing to graduate high school. Who are you dating? What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm really not sure what I want to do with my life, Elvis. I'm still kind of in constraints about what I should and shouldn't do. And he said, well, let me give you a piece of advice. And he said, you can do anything you want to do. You can be anything you want to be if you remember these 4 things. And I said, okay, what are they? He said, always have faith in God. Always have faith in yourself. Be willing to work hard for what you want. And never let anyone tell you that you cannot accomplish your dreams, because I'm living proof that you can. So I've adhered to those, rules and that he gave me, and that advice. And it's carried me far. And I always tell people when I'm talking to them and I'm speaking, if you have a dream, it doesn't matter if you're 10 or if you're, 50 or 60, never let go of that dream, because it can come true if you really want it.
Yeah, and it's such a great inspirational message, I think, for everybody, isn't it?
Yes, it is indeed. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Now, growing up on the Circle G Ranch, what everyday activities or hobbies did you share with Elvis that fans may not know about?
Well, we'd ride horses, just spend family time together. He loved doing it. He loved being out on the Circle G. He loved the serenity and the calmness of it. It was such a beautiful place. And he just loved having fun. I remember in March, right not long after he'd bought it. He bought it in February. And this was in March. And we had this huge snowstorm, much bigger than we've ever, have gotten in most years. And so he was putting people in a canoe that he had, or a little boat, and pulling them behind a tractor and just slinging people around, he just loved having regular fun, going to skating rinks, going to movies, different things like that, just regular, ordinary things. But the thing of it was, is he would have to do it, after everybody else went to bed, or where, everything else closed, and he'd open it back up. But, he just loved just regular things. He was a prankster. He loved having fun. He loved laughing. And, always was, thought that everybody should join in. He loved shooting fireworks, and they would, all the women would gather inside out of the danger zone, and the guys would go out there and shoot Roman candles at each other. And I remember one Christmas, my mother had just bought my dad a brand new leather jacket. Well, Elvis thought it'd be really, really funny to wrap 2 or 3 Roman candles together, light them, and stick them in my dad's pocket. Well, the coat caught on fire. My dad's coming out of the jacket, and it's flaming. Elvis is laughing like crazy. And so then my dad, not to be outdone by Elvis, shoots a Roman candle at Elvis, and it hits him on the neck, and it burns his neck. Well, he had to stay home and heal for a couple of weeks before he could do his next film because of that. But just things like that, almost burning down Graceland. He thought that was funny. That fire department came out, they put it out, he's signing autographs, talking to the guys. So it was just always just a lot of fun. And my mother always said it was controlled chaos when Elvis was around.
Glorious stuff. We love the idea of Elvis the prankster. I think that's wonderful. It sounds really good. Now, you do a lot of humanitarian work. Talk to me about that.
Well, I'm on the board of Mississippi Music Foundation, which is in Mississippi, which Elvis was from Mississippi. And they help artists provide instruments, give them an opportunity to perform places that possibly they wouldn't be able to perform. I'm on the board of Choosing to Live, which is against suicide. And, we try to give them tools to reach far instead of something else. And then also on Anthem, which is a way of bringing nations together and healing through music and education. So
yeah, really, really important. And the whole idea about music therapy, we have over here something called Nordorf Robbins and Silverclef, which I've helped with a number of events for them. The power of music is so strong, isn't it?
It is. It is. Because music can touch somebody when words can't, or when they don't want to hear the words, the music can still touch them and make a difference. And that's all Elvis was about, was making differences in people's lives, touching them and making it a smaller, better place, for everyone, and touching people and bringing them together. And that's what he was all about. And he's still doing that 48 years after his passing.
It is amazing.
I travel, like I said, all over the world, and people are always coming up to me. These are people from age 2 almost to 92, and telling me how Elvis touched their lives. And everybody has an Elvis story. about how he made a difference in their lives. And that's quite a legacy to be left.
Oh, it's a phenomenal legacy, and what I love about it is that you're still here to tell that legacy and so on and so forth, and also to dispel a lot of the myths because that's
Yeah.
so important, isn't it, about misinformation. So, just in terms of legacy, then, how do you think Elvis himself would like to be remembered?
That he was a good man and that he made a difference for the better in people's lives and that he touched them in a very positive and great way. That's what I think he would say.
Yeah.
That Melody.
And that's certainly been true for lots of people. Now, you very kindly have been agreed to be a regular on the Andrew Eborn
Yeah.
show, which is going to be lovely. I know lots of people around the world will have questions. So if they do want to do that, you can write to me at Andrew Eborn at Octopus TV and do subscribe to the Andrew Eborn show. It's free. Everybody's
Yeah.
favorite four-letter word. Hurrah! It's going to be good. But finally, then, how would you yourself like to be remembered?
That I defended my family, that to the best of my ability. I want to be remembered as that I always stood up for my faith in God, that I always stood up and, cleared up any misconceptions about my family, and that I lived the best life that I possibly could and made a difference for the better in other people's lives.
Fantastic. And lovely, lovely thoughts to end in. But for now, Donna Presley, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Andrew. It was great. Thank you. I had fun.
It's all yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Presley, and I subscribe to the Andrew Eborn Show, and you should too.